Some say these two trainers were quietly in the shadows. Robert Weatherwax, last of the legendary Lassie Traienrs from the world's most famous dog training family, was quietly hidden in his TV work. And CHristophe Clugston, Jedi Dog Master, was traveling from the sub-zero Arctic to the sweltering jungle heat training dogs on 3 continents. But a chance meeting changed all of that. Now Robert and CHristophe have joined forces, and they're breaking the silence. For the first time, the secretive and hidden world of the movie dog trainer and the science of the elite tactical trainer will be revealed. That's right, finally, they're out of the shadows.
Welcome to the podcast, videocast. This time around, socialization, especially obviously with puppies, and later with rescue dogs that are older. How can I socialize the dog or the puppy so that he'll be able or she'll be able to get along with other dogs or other people or situations or environments? And one of the things that's crucial about this, of course, is that working dogs, it's an art form and a science for working dogs. Also, movie dogs, and we'll be talking about that. I'll be talking about working dogs here in the beginning, and then Robert will be talking about some of the instances, for example, of the Lassies. One of the things that Rudd did was he had a great socialization program going for all of the dogs who played Lassie. So let's talk about it. So socialization, meaning to have your dog capable of being flexible to fit into different environments, not to be fearful or scared of different situations or sounds or lights, many different things. This is obviously very crucial also for seeing eye dogs. There are entire programs for seeing eye dogs, bomb dogs, protection dogs, military dogs, police dogs, where there are people who do nothing but socialize the puppies. And then when they get to a certain age, then they go to the trainers. It's set up in sort of different phases and stages. Now, what is crucial, you have to know these sorts of things. 7 to 12 weeks is extremely crucial for a puppy. This is where the core of all of the things that the dog will accept as normal will be found. Now, individual dogs and dog breeds have a delay, and it's really what it's called technically for the people who are ethologists or also behavioral ecologists. It's called hazard avoidance training time, where they'll adapt to certain things. They will also accept ducks, for example, or chickens, livestock guarding dogs. They spend their time with the sheep or the cattle, and they will begin to bond immediately during this time. And so they will do what their people had bred them to do, accept and protect those animals. Anyway, so certain dogs have a longer time. Seeing eye dog people spend a fortune on testing the dogs to find out which dog is the best, would have the longest period of time that this lasts, and that's actually Labrador Retrievers. They're better than German Shepherds. German Shepherds were used initially. They're kind of traditional, so a lot of people want a German Shepherd as a seeing eye dog, but the Labradors are actually better, and the female Labradors are actually better than the males in the aggregate. So this a lot of money's been spent on this. The same thing happens for the military dogs, depending on what they're doing. Of course, the breeding of the different dogs will occur, but this time frame, 7 to 12 weeks, is extremely crucial. Now, everything is. Some working dog people, and I mean the protection people or even the high-level sports people, will take a dog at 6 weeks. I do not recommend this for normal people or people who don't already know these things. It's we're educating people who probably don't know anything about this or filling in some blanks for some other people. But this is for expert level people taking a dog at 6 weeks, because you're going to have a program set up where you're going to be giving the dog stimulus through sights, sounds, smells, all these different things. This is very crucial actually too for trailing and tracking dogs. So people think that they get a better, experts think they get a better jump on training the dog if they'll take the dog at 6 weeks, but I don't recommend this for normal people. Anyway, this 7 to 12 weeks is very crucial. And then all of the dog's life obviously is crucial, but there's another period where the dog goes through what is called the secondary fear phase, and this is longer, and it can and it doesn't happen exactly at one point in time, and it can end up happening anywhere during this window, basically. And that's generally a window from, it's a pretty long window, 6 months to 14 months. Again, depends on the dog. So this is especially for dogs who do bite work. It's incredibly important that they have success and are not stressed out way hard until after they're 14 months old. And also, you shouldn't be jumping any dogs. You should not have dogs jumping any sort of heights or distance before they're 14 months old. I don't care what type of breed that dog is. My Dutch Shepherd, he never jumped anything other than what he did on his own before 14 months. You just don't want that. You don't want to damage the dog. I see a lot of people with Malinois, with ego trips, trying to have the dogs do this. Yes, the dogs will do it, but you're creating damage and wear and tear on the dog. The dog will be in later life really destroyed, just like some athletes are and gymnasts are that start very early and actually get pushed beyond their bounds very early on. So this phase is very important to watch the dog and understand that the dog can go through this fear phase from 6 months to 14 months. And this is where, for example, like firecrackers, fireworks, this can come in for the dog and scare him where he may not have shown that he was fearful of this situation, or vacuum cleaners or car rides if you haven't kept the car rides up. So it's really important when the dog is very young that you continue it through this period, because it's not really solidified until the dog is 14 months old. This is something that's very crucial with, like I say, working dogs. And working dogs, I'm including any dog that does something functional, whether that be trailing or tracking, protection, scout dogs, bomb dogs, narcotic dogs, seeing eye dogs. There are other dogs too, psychiatric dogs. There are many different types of dogs now used in the working class. So we're also herding dogs. If the dog is not out there with the sheep, it's not out there with the cattle or the goats at that age period, they will never be able to do it. So this is something, a lot of people are grabbing livestock guarding dogs as they think they look cool and stuff, and bringing them again into the suburban urban lifestyle. And that's what they were never designed. Humans design certain dogs for certain attributes. And this is one of the things livestock guarding dogs were developed to be out on the prairie or the ranch or the farm or in the hills. And some of the herding dogs were too, like all the collies basically were herding dogs. Now, people like the way they look, and they're intelligent, and they're very fast to learn. That's one of the things, is they have to be very directed from the shepherd or the cattle movers. The same thing with the Australian cattle dogs, etc. Now, the livestock guarding dogs are more independent, same as with the sled dogs. But all this time period is very crucial, and it's important to go through these meticulously and with a progression. And I'm going to hand it over to Robert because, like I said, Rudd, one of the great things he did, one of the reasons why he had his dogs that played Lassie be able to handle any sort of scene, was because he had an incredible environment set up for them when they were young, and had them go through the socialization period. And Robert obviously was there to see it, especially on the ranch. So, hey, Robert, it's up to you. You want to delve into it?
Yeah, I was doing that stuff when I was a kid. Obviously, when I became old enough to drive, my dad used to send me down to malls and parks with various dogs. And I always had a vehicle where, I could put a dog in the back and just take them to the shopping mall. And, people gave me the strangest looks when I was out there because, I'm standing out next to the automatic door at a grocery store, or by the bus stop, or up near the playground where the kids are screaming. And, and I'm just hanging out there. And the key to the exposure, which exposure and socialization to me are kind of directly linked. But the exposure is a big part of training, and I highlight that a lot in my book. And it's not about putting a dog on a sit in a particular place. It's about setting up a camp in an area, giving the dog the chance to explore around the area. So that it's the same thing when people tell me, oh, their dogs are so reactive when people come to the door. I said, well, a lot of the reason is because the dog doesn't know what the world looks like. outside the front door, right? So a lot of the times I tell my clients, I said, listen, if your dog ever gets lost, he wouldn't even be able to find his way home because you don't walk him down the street. So you need to walk him down the street, get him familiar with the area. It's the same way if you're at a trash receptacle, like one of those trash recycling places where there's a lot of noises and things being scooped up and dropped over here. Places like that, construction sites. These are the kind of things where I'm just putting them out there and I'm letting them explore. I have the 50-foot leash that I always use, and I just let them go east, go west, go north, go south, whatever. And then I bring them back and I give them a goodie. I gauge the dog a lot by the goodie. You know, people say, well, you use food. That's a cheat. You're not really supposed to use food for training. I train without treats. I say, well, then I guess you'd like it to take a lot longer than it should. Because if you're not using treats, then you're not really accelerating the training. And you're also not able to gauge the dog's well-being in a place. If I go into, say, Lowe's, for example, week 1, the dog's not eating any treats. And maybe towards the end of the lesson, he starts to eat a couple treats. The second lesson, I'm there. It's like, oh, this is Lowe's. I've been there before. I've done this. And now give me some food. And it changes. It evolves. So I like to say, I overuse this word a lot, for organically getting a dog used to a situation where they have an exit strategy in their mind. They feel like, well, you're here. And they gravitate towards you. But you being there, that doesn't mean you're coddling them. It doesn't mean you're telling them it's going to be okay. Because the dog picks that up and says, why are you talking that way? Why is your tone changing? Is there something wrong with this place that we are right now? Because your voice, you don't normally talk like that. And people think that they're doing a dog a favor when they're coddling them and using this baby talk. But it's detrimental. And it's especially detrimental when the dog's already a little iffy about where you are. So, and it happens gradually. Now, I'm just going to use general terms when I talk about flooding. A lot of people like to throw dogs right in the fire, create confrontation, create anxiety, so they'll work through it. I don't believe in that philosophy. I believe in doing it more gradually, getting it's increments. You go to first base and you see what it looks like there. Then you go to second base, but you don't try to hit a home run on the first swing. And that's the key to it. That's why I feel like the more gradual method, because if you go too far, too fast, you're going to end up getting in problems, and you're going to have to go back. You're going to have to backtrack to fix the things that you push too hard. So just remember that patience is a virtue, and as a dog trainer, you have to have a lot of patience. Christophe has a ton of patience. I've seen him work, and you can't get frustrated. And if you get frustrated, you have to walk away. Yeah. So because if you're upset in a place that they're already upset, now you've got compounding crisis going on between you and the dog. So you can't show your fear. Remember the poker game. It's all about, I've got 4 aces, but actually you only have 2 twos. This is the feeling that your dog should feel like you've been there, you're calm, you don't care, you've been here a million times. The same way that they're going to feel after they've done all this stuff, after you've taken them to the park and the shopping mall and wherever you can get a dog in. I'm like, if I can get a dog in a store, no matter what store it is, I'm trying to get them in there because it's always going to be a different experience. There might be dogs in there. I've even gone to PetSmart, but of course, when I do go there, they always try to solicit me on dog training, and I have to tell them, hey, I'm a dog trainer, okay? I've been training longer than like all of the people in this store, combine them all, and I've still been training longer just myself. As well as Christophe. So just keep in mind, a slow and steady is better than throwing them in the fire and overwhelming them with stimuli that they're not prepared to deal with all at once. Give them a little, and then give them a little treat, offer them a treat, see where they stand. And I'll give it back to Christophe.
Okay, so you brought something up when you're talking about flooding, for example. One of the greatest examples of that is how people used to break horses. That is complete flooding when they're breaking a horse. And there were people who used that. They even called it breaking a dog. There were people who did that same approach because they basically want to drive the horse or the dog into submission immediately, so the dog will be, or the horse will be compliant. Now you got to remember there are a lot of differences between a horse and a dog. Number one, a horse is not a predator at all, and a dog, canines are partially. Now, of course, we talked about this before, but domestic dogs are more scavengers than they are anything else. But anyway, but this, yeah, the flooding idea is bad. It's also like saying, I've used this analogy before, but say you want to, your goal is to be on a high wire act. You don't start off 30 feet off the ground with no net. you start out in increments, as Robert was saying, and you have a protocol that you're going to make all of these little adjustments so that you can gradually reach this 20 or 30 feet height, or even higher than that. But anybody who's successful, they don't go from 0 to 190 miles an hour. The same thing with race car drivers. They didn't just get in the car and go 190 miles an hour. They sure did a lot of stuff at 70, 80, 90, and below that first, even before they could raise it up. So it's incremental learning. It's steps. Everything is a step. It's a gradual. It has to be. When you have a stronger foundation from it taking longer, then you'll have a better outcome, because trying to do it fast, as Robert was saying, you're going to have a collapse. You're going to have something happen that's not good. It's going to be bad. Or you can also just ruin the dog. I'm sure, Robert, we've talked about exotic animal trainers, for example, and there were a lot of guys who did this, basically the flooding technique, and it destroys animals or makes them extremely dangerous to be around. Now, it's one thing it's called induced fear reaction aggression. So this will happen, and you don't want a tiger or an elephant to have this happen. It's one thing, if you try to do it Chihuahua, for example, but doing it with exotic, big animals. That's also why there was a lot of litigation against certain trainers and things. It's become a hard world for exotic animal trainers nowadays. We've talked recently about that. But anyway, how does that lead back to the dog stuff? Well, because if they've changed their methods, which they basically have in the exotic animal world, and they're dealing with mammals, then maybe that's a key that we should probably try to follow the same thing with dog, even though you can get away with it sometimes. But we don't try to get away with it. We're trying to do the best result. The end result is always trying to be the best result. This is something, of course. Now, I want to bring up that there is footage, and I'm going to try to put it on here as B-roll of Robert when he was young, and he's at the Rudge Ranch, and you see, is that Hey? I think it's Hey, right? But and you see him helping out with the training of the dog. Dogs going up ladders and all these things too. Surface changes. You want to have the dog used to textures, different surface changes, getting in and out of cars, going up and down steps, all these things that a very slippery floor that will freak a lot of dogs out. So you want to try to have them go through a gradual approach to this sort of thing so they'll handle it, no problem. I have one of my dogs who wants to spend all of his time with me. This is, again, Gilgamesh, who just cannot be away from me. It wants to lick me. So I don't really want to have a tongue across my nose right now. But anyway, so you'll see this in the B-roll, and also Robert is you'll see that Hey has got no problem with chickens or ducks, and that was one of the things that Rudd said is really difficult for most dogs to handle. They get excited around fowl, basically, and he wanted to make sure that he had no problem. And there's also footage in other places where I don't know which dog it was. Maybe Hey, it could be even after him, that picking up kittens and moving kittens around. And this is something that this is an achievement by itself. I mean, a huge achievement, because there are a lot of dogs who would clamp down on that cat, all right, and that'd be the end of the cat. You have cat burger, feline burger. All of this was done by the socialization exposure. These two terms, they're really synonymous with each other, because socialization can't happen without exposure. And if you're exposing the dog to different things, you'll have a socialization happen. And this is the key. This is what Robert was talking about. It's crucial. I mean, it's extremely crucial. And this is where, again, I want to reiterate this. This is one of the things where people there are guys who do high level, sport dog trainers and stuff. They consider this is the make it or break it. This is where their dog will become the future champion of a contrived sport is during this time period, and they spend all of their time on this because this lays the foundation and groundwork for the obedience and the specific tasks that they do later on. This is it, because if they can't, and that's why they always want puppies. Some people start with what's called a green dog, which is older, but a lot of those dogs have been socialized by someone else who, as I said, specifically caters on that. I know a guy in Holland, in the Netherlands, who specifically does that. He gets dogs that go to the military and the police, and he gets them as puppies because he's really great at it and gets them ready for biting and has them biting and doing all sorts of stuff because he's an expert at that stage. And then when they get to about 9-10 months old, then they move on to someone else. Sometimes he keeps them longer than that. But anyway, my point being that this is extremely crucial, but it doesn't mean that if you don't get a puppy or a dog from at that age, that it's over with, because that's one of the things we cover. We talk about, Robert, of course, his business is built on dealing with people who have rescue dogs, shelter dogs, pound dogs, whatever you want to call them, found dogs, abandoned dogs, neglected dogs. And you see me, I have a bunch of those guys, and it's another process. And that's a whole thing. As always, there's an art and science to dog training. And it's a rare person who can have both of them put together, who knows the science and also has the art. And then you got to add on to that experience. It's one of the things I was talking about the other in another podcast or vidcast with the matriarch, and she basically agreed too with what Robert said. It was like, anybody with less than 20 years of experience that's not worth going to, because they just don't know how to solve the problem. They haven't found out what really works. And that's the same thing we've said now. Hey, sorry for people. Pay your dues, do your apprenticeships, get as much exposure to as a trainer as you possibly can, so that you'll get there. You come up here. But this is one of the things. One of the things. The reason Robert is on here, obviously, is because he is an expert. It's always about. You can't lie with results at all. There's no arguing with results. So you got to look at the results and the previous work and the body of work and all the things they've done. Robert's got a lot of credits on movies, TV series, and he's done commercials and stuff. You don't do that if you suck. I mean, let's just be real. It doesn't happen if you suck. And the same thing. I just have to put it out there because a lot of times we don't talk about our credentials. And I don't know if people have watched a bunch of our other videos or vidcasts or podcasts before they come to this one. So I got to reiterate it, kind of boring to us because we say it all the time. But it's important to know our backgrounds and stuff. We can't go through the entire thing, but just this is one of the things, we've done stuff and we've been around. So combined, we have over 100 years of experience. Nobody else has that on YouTube. Definitely they don't. So anyway, but is there something that I didn't cover there, Robert, about exposure, or do you want to talk about RUD or anything? Or
yeah, I'll just go through a couple things. First of all, we're talking about that flooding, just to give an example of the different approach that trainers have. I come in the heels of a lot of other trainers who have been tried and dismissed, and then they call me. And I had a case recently where we had 3 dogs that were getting into fights, and the situation is not ideal because they're in a small place. It's a house, but it's a small house. There's 3 large dogs, and they've been getting into fights periodically, mostly when they converge on the owner. So what I've done, and I know there's a lot of trainers that would create a confrontation, but this particular trainer actually told them the advice that they gave them was to induce a fight in order to fix the problem. I was like, are you kidding me? So what you're saying is that we should put gasoline on the fire to make it go out. That's not the way to do it. What I do is I give them a common job. And it relates a lot to when I was in the military, when we were all like a number in a file. Players in the band, but we were not the leader of the band. I'm the leader of the band. You're the leader of the band. As a trainer, Christophe is the leader of his band. And when I go out there, I'll put the dog on 3 separate marks surrounding me and make them all work. And then I'll feed them from the middle separately and reward them. And everybody gets equal reward. But they're learning to work together. They're learning to get the same thing. And then, of course, I take them on walks together because it's a positive act, for the most dogs anyway. taking them out on a walk, just getting them to, be able to coexist together, do fun things together, not always be competing for stuff. And I always tell the owners, when the dogs converge on you, walk away. Don't stay there, because now they're nose to nose. And if you take away the bait, then there's no need to fight. So a lot of it is creating, retraining the owners and retraining the way the dogs look at each other and look at the world. Now, when you look at socialization, which is the subject of this podcast, there's really three things I look at. It's people, it's other animals, and it's places, right? Now, when I talk about places, I'm talking about, different types of places, a race car track, a shopping mall. When I look, I'll go through this from back to front, but when I look at places, it's the same when I look at a script for a movie. I look at the locations. Are they going to be near a shooting range? Are they going to be at a baseball game? I look at all the scenes to see where the dog's going to be. And then I try to simulate those places. Those places that my dad sent me to take the dog were places that were simulated in a script that he was working on with the dog that he was going to train after I got him. I did that for him. Sometimes he paid me, sometimes he didn't, but it was just something that I did, and I learned a lot from it. Look at the script. Look at what your dog's going to have to do in life. Maybe I'm going to have to go to the vet. Maybe I'm going to have to take him to get groomed. Maybe I'm going to take him in the car, period. Maybe I have to take him for a walk. Is he going to be able to handle that stuff? So you need to be thinking way ahead at what your life is going to entail down the road. And then you want to prepare your dog to be part of your life. You don't want to prepare them to be locked in the room or the crate while you're enjoying your life and doing all kinds of your own individual stuff while the dog doesn't get to participate in any of that. Now, the other thing, we talked about other animals, which I just touched on, socialization between dogs so they can get along, socialization between animals. Hey and Meyer, who did most of the work with the wildlife on the Lassie series, they were exposed to animals as a puppy. They were around pigeons, they were around chickens, they were around cows. They lived the farm life. It was like Old Yeller. Everything was, it's all there. Get used to it, or what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So we put them in places that from an early age, and it becomes just ordinary as they get older. But if you take them and you isolate a dog, which we talked about isolation in the last episode, if you isolate them and then put them into a public situation with other dogs, other people, they're not going to be prepared for it. And it's like if the dog is out there in a public place and it's seeing everything for the first time, you're going to have some problems. You've got to get around the cafe, and then you get in the cafe, and then you get a table at the cafe. But you're working outside in. Everything's outside in. And once you're in, you're in. And the dog is going to feel comfort because you were calm about everything, and you introduced them to them incrementally, as we keep saying. And those are the things you got to work about. You got to work around. You got to think about the places they're going to be, the people they're going to be around. And that includes mailmen, UPS drivers, a lot of stuff that is part of your life that you don't even really think about. Like how many dogs freak out when they hear the sound of those air brakes on the UPS truck when they arrive in front of the house, or the Amazon truck. A lot of dogs don't hear it. What if they hear a golf cart for the first time, or electric car? I've seen dogs actually react to electric cars because they don't make any noise going by, because they're so used to hearing cars' engines going by. They get used to that. And then when they hear a car that doesn't have an engine sound, it's like, what the heck is that? Was that a spaceship, or what is that? So it's all perspective. You have to think from a dog's point of view. And I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but Carl Miller used to do that when he was on set, even on the level of the dog. So if you had a small dog, he got way down low himself to see the POV of the dog. And if it was a mid-sized dog, he got eye level with that dog. And if it was a Great Dane, well, he only just bent over a little bit just to see if the lights were blocking him, see what the dog sees. That way you can make adjustments. And another thing that I like to do when I'm around people is I talk about the teeter-totter effect in my dog training book about, the lower dog needs to be, the scared, frightened dog needs to be raised up, and the more outgoing dog needs to be pulled down. I'll give it back to Christophe, but it's definitely an individual basis. You have to look at each dog and what each dog needs and address it accordingly. There's no cookie cutter approach. There's no way to say, I trained this dog this way, so I'm going to train this dog the same way, and I'm going to expose them to the same things, because if they don't need to be, if they've already been to a baseball field 5-6 times, you don't have to really focus on that anymore. You can move on to something else. And of course with the people, that teeter-totter effect, which is the point I was going for, was when I go into a public place, I do not feed the dog. I make all the food come from everybody else. So that way, they're the high end of the teeter-totter, and I'm down at the bottom. It's making them greater because I'm not giving them anything myself. So you don't go out into a crowd trying to get a dog to accept things, talking to them constantly. You got to let them kind of figure things out on their own. And I'll place food in strangers' hands and just tell them, hey, feed my dog. And do it with an open hand, because some dogs take the food kind of aggressively. They, if you just put a couple fingers out there, they might take your fingers off, just overzealous over the food. So always feed open-handed and use the people around you so they can get adjusted to that. And as far as the dogs go, really just working together, the dogs learning to, for a common goal, like when I was in the Navy and we were all marching together to a common place. That's what we're kind of do in that situation as well. And then of course, read the script, your life script, and figure out what your dog's going to need way down the road, not just today. And back over to you, Christophe, and take it away.
Okay. Well, this is Zarathustra, my super dog, who just came over. He also wants to lick me in the face nonstop, which is you see him. If I could tell him to switch modes, click into being a protection dog, but then you see him, people are like, I can't believe the dog can do it. Well, that's why the high level genetics that he's stable like that. But anyway, you got a lot to work on here, people. There's a lot contained here. We packed a lot of stuff in here. There's a lot of information about socialization, exposure. You need to do it. You need to stay tuned to all of this, because what I have to say again here at the end is that if you have a specific dog and you want to implement these sorts of things, this can be done, of course, in person with either one of us if you have to be around us. But if you can't be, then you can connect with us through consults. I want to say that because a lot of people ask, well, I wish I were where you're at, or I wish that you guys could come here. Well, we can do that now with technology. And so I want to put that out there. But that's, think about it, everyone. Think about how strong of a bond that you'll get with your dog if you do the socialization exposure correctly.